This is a very quick video comparing my Jag X Type to my dad's Ford Cougar 1999 model. And at first glance you think these cars don't have that much in common, but they do, because they have exactly the same 2.5 V6 engine. So my Jag is the 2.5 V6 Petrol Manual, and you can see here it has the Jaguar branded V6. In fact, this is the derivative of the Duratec engine which is put in the Fords. Anyone with the Jaguar X Type will be very familiar with this layout. It's a V6. We can see there's a bank in the front and a bank in the back. It goes across the car. The gearbox is down underneath there. The transfer box for the four-wheel drive is down buried beneath there. This engine puts out 196 brake horsepower, and the car weighs about 1650 at the curb, and quoted top speed is 140 mile an hour. Performance, you can get 0 to 60 in 8.3. So imprint that on your mind and then look at the Duratec engine in the Cougar. It is a very similar engine, because this was the engine they used to source the Jag engine. This again is a 2.5 V6 petrol engine. Funnily enough, it only rated at 168 brake horsepower, so they haven't actually tuned it to a very high level. You can see again it's a transverse engine. They put the filters to the side, presumably because the front of the car isn't as big as the Jag. Claimed 140 top end, claimed 0 to 60 7.8. This is only front wheel drive, and believe me, it makes an enormous difference to the handling. Looking off into the distance, you can just about see the transfer box, then the prop shaft which comes down the middle of the car, and then we've got the back of the differential, and then the anti-roll bar and the rear suspension setup, which will be familiar to all our Jag types, because they'll always be under here changing these bushes. A much more complicated mechanism than the Cougar. Looking under the Cougar is quite a peculiar experience for me, because it's a front wheel drive car. Obviously there's no prop shaft and there's no differential, and it's got quite a slender looking suspension arrangement. Very economical on parts. Quite a clever design, I guess. The Cougar has these really nice 6-spoke alloys, and interestingly they've only got 4 holes rather than 5 holes that the Jag has. The rear brake assembly is the other way round, i.e. the calipers to the front of the car, and the disc is really quite dinky. I imagine it generates a lot of stopping power, but it's a lot smaller than the Jag one. While we're here, the reason I've taken this apart is I was trying to repair a dent. You can just see it there. I can get at that one, and then there's a dent here where someone sideswiped the vehicle while my dad was stationary in traffic. What I found though is that although I can undo this, there's another steel skin inside. So I can't get to this area here. This one, the worst one. Can't get to this one without taking the entire interior trim where the seats are. Not the boot, where the seats are. So I'm not going to be doing that job. I've done a few jobs on this car now, and one of the things I've noticed, which is significantly different to the Jag, is the quality of the fasteners. Now these fasteners were put in the car in 1999. I've just taken them out. They came out really easily, and they'll all go back on. When I work on the Jag, all the fasteners destroy themselves and I have to replace them. I don't know why that should be, but it is. Cougar's got a Ford branded locking wheel nut with a multi-splined key, and a blanking plate which is actually branded Cougar. People nick these though. The blanking plate has a locating key which fits in this groove, so you have to make sure you put it on the right way. The Cougar first came out in 1998 and it was styled with this sharp edged geometry, softened off by the rounded headlights. I think it's a styling you either like or you don't. I actually quite like it. I'm not so sure about the tail end. That looks like it's been designed by a committee. The spoiler was put on as an aftermarket thing. But the big fat deep bumper, I really don't like that. It doesn't work really that well. It's quite ugly. When you compare it to the sleek lines of the Jag, the Jag has been really thought through by some British designers. This has been really thought through by, I don't know, a multicultural conglomerate who couldn't agree on what it should look like. Being a coupe, the Cougar has enormous doors, and after a while they start to sag on the hinges and they start to click when you open them. This car's doing pretty well. It's done 125,000 miles and they haven't had to been altered yet, but they're getting close to that now. You can work out the difference in the size of the doors. This one's fully open, the other one I couldn't open all the way. Now if we look inside the car, bearing in mind mine is the base model, the cheapest one you could get. This is actually trimmed in Connolly hides, and it has a really nice dashboard, which although it's plastic looks like it's actually made out of wood, and it's really nicely finished. Great dials and a big central console with a 6 CD multi-changer, all in really good order. In the back of the car there's plenty of leg room. This is set up for my normal driving position and the seat is actually quite well back. But 3 adults can sit in the back really comfortably in this car and not feel sick. The Cougar has loads of leg room in the front, absolutely loads, but it's bad news if you're sitting in the back. The seats are bucket seats, they're really uncomfortable, and if you're an adult you will actually have your head up in the glass. And every time I've been in the back of this seat I've really wanted to toss my cookies because it is really uncomfortable. However, you can see that the upholstery is really good quality, really well made, no rips or tears. A lot of this is due down to the fact that nobody ever sits in the back. The front seats have always had covers on because, well, my father's an engineer and he doesn't want to get them dirty. I'm sitting inside the Cougar now, managing to deaden the sound of the main road with the cars going by. It's really quite quiet in here. The dials are really familiar, they're really large, easy to read, same layout as the Jag. They've pushed them together in this quirky way, presumably because they needed to force them into the narrow dashboard. The switch gear is exactly the same as the Jag, all the switches work in the same way, and you've got the same light setup, slightly uglier light switch I must say, and then there is also a reasonable cluster in the middle. We've got a CD player with a radio built into it, the same gearbox, and in fact I think this is probably the same gator just put round at a right angle, and the interior is pretty much styled in the same way. The plastics haven't lasted very well, and my father's actually coated the plastics up on the top here because they were starting to delaminate.
I feel blue without Peggy.
My dad was serving in Cyprus when Buddy Holly was killed, and he's always loved him ever since. Right, we'll just start it up. It's beeping away because I haven't got the seatbelt on. Idling at about 1,250 on the advance. Sounds really smooth. The engine pulls amazingly well. The switchgear in this car I think is pretty ugly. The air conditioning no longer works. We've changed the compressor and I've changed the condenser and we need to get it recharged, but these cars are actually famous for the aircon packing up, whereas the aircon in the Jag is amazing. It's not really an inspiring interior. I'm not sure what they were thinking about when they designed this. I quite like the door handles, they're quite groovy, a bit Star Trek, but otherwise it's really quite bland in here. There's a whole cluster here of various things. I think that's traction control, but I've got a feeling my dad turns that off anyway. From the point of view of boot space, it is actually about the same. The Jag has a huge boot actually. I've got a lot of my things still in there, but I can get 6 guitar cases in there. The Cougar is a really good size as well, and you can see at the moment it's just full of tools and everyday things. But again, with this car you can fold the seats down, and then we can put in 2 sets of golf clubs, electric buggy, hand buggy, all our equipment, and still have plenty of space to put other things in. And of course you can't put annoying children in there at the same time. From the point of view of handling and performance, there really is no comparison. The Jaguar is 100 times better than the Cougar. The permanent 4-wheel drive makes it stick to the ground like glue. It goes around the corners like it's on rails, and there's very few cars that actually can keep up with it. The Cougar is front wheel drive and the steering is very heavy. The front tyres have to be pumped up to at least 36 for it to become responsive. It picks up amazingly quickly, but the 24 valves don't cut in until you're doing 4,000 RPM. So by the time you're up there, the Jaguar has gone by you. The other criticism I'd have of this car is that the brakes just aren't good enough for the power of it. If I bang the brakes on my Jaguar, I will stop very quickly, and I don't stop quick enough in the Cougar. Just as a final note, the Cougar is a much maligned car. It's actually in lists of the top 10 worst cars ever, and it really doesn't deserve that reputation. It got that reputation because they didn't sell enough of them, so it was a commercial failure. As a car itself, it's really nice to drive, it's really useful, and if you haven't got a family, it's really good. It is nowhere near as good as the Jag, but then you pays your money, you takes your choice. And I would just like to thank all of the traffic that has decided to spend all bloody afternoon going by. It is Sunday, can't you go home and do something more useful than make this racket while I'm trying to make my film?